Amen.
Defender of the human race!
They called it a cursed production, and maybe they were right. Behind The Exorcist lurked fires that started without cause, accidents that defied explanation, and actors who were never the same again. The screams on set didn't all come from acting. The crew knew that. But the real question is, what price did this film truly demand? Because once you know what really happened behind those spinning heads and shattered nerves, you'll never watch it the same way again. Fact 1. The night the set burned. The trouble began long before the cameras rolled. In the dead of night, fire swept across the main house set. It moved fast, crackling through the walls, melting cables, erasing weeks of work. By morning, the crew stood in stunned silence. Everything was blackened rubble, except for one strange thing. Reagan's bedroom was untouched. The flames had stopped right at his doorway, as if something unseen had drawn a line. No one could explain it. Electricians checked the wiring. Investigators searched for a cause. They found nothing. No spark, no clue. People stopped saying bad luck. They lowered their voices and called it something else. A chill spread through the crew like smoke. It felt like the film didn't want to be made, or like something was guarding it. This wasn't just a fire. It was the first sign that The Exorcist might be carrying something dark. Fact 2. A real injury on camera. Fear wasn't the only thing breaking on that set. In one scene, Ellen Burstyn, playing Reagan's terrified mother, had to be thrown backward. A hidden wire yanked her hard, meant to make her crash for dramatic effect. But it went wrong. The pull was too strong. She slammed onto her back and let out a sharp, piercing scream. That sound, the one in the film, isn't acting. It's real pain caught forever on camera. Burstyn's injury damaged her spine. The pain lingered for years long after the credits rolled. And yet, the director kept that take. He said it was too real to lose. The crew watched her limp off set, shaken. They knew they had pushed past safety into something else. She gave the film a piece of herself. That moment became iconic, but for Burstyn, it was a wound, both seen and unseen. Fact 3. Deaths around the production. Whispers grew louder as filming went on. People connected to The Exorcist began dying. Not just crew, even family members of the cast. Jack McGowan, who played Burke Dennings, died of the flu shortly after filming his scenes. Actress Vasiliki Maliaris passed away soon after completing her role. A night watchman from the set was killed. Even a special effects expert died before the premiere. Different causes, different places. But the timing felt eerie, like shadows trailing the production. The crew noticed. They spoke in hushed tones, afraid to say the word curse, yet saying it anyway. Each death made the air heavier. Even people who laughed at the idea still glanced behind them while walking to their cars at night. The work went on, but something had shifted. It wasn't just a horror film anymore, it was starting to feel haunted. Fact 4. A priest was asked to bless the set. Fear doesn't stop cameras, but it spreads fast behind them. As the strange events piled up, the crew grew restless. Whispers of curses and bad omens hung in the air. So the studio tried something unusual. They called in Father Thomas Birmingham, a Jesuit priest who had been consulting on the script. He wasn't there to act, he was there to pray. He walked quietly through the set, sprinkling holy water, murmuring blessings in Latin. Some crew members bowed their heads. Others stared at the floor, unsure if this was superstition or safety. For a brief moment, the tension lifted. The rooms felt still again. Then, as the lights came back on, so did the unease. Nothing physical changed, but something in the air felt heavier, thicker, and the fear returned, stronger than before. It was becoming clear this wasn't just nerves. Something about the film was sinking into them. Fact 5. The studio tried to keep it quiet. The people on set felt something was wrong. The people in the studio felt something else. Panic about money. Warner Brothers feared bad press more than burned sets or broken bones. If word got out that The Exorcist was cursed, investors could flee and audiences might avoid it. So they ordered silence. Crew were told not to talk to reporters. Official statements claimed the shoot was on schedule. Every problem became minor. Every injury, a precaution. Behind the walls, though, tension simmered like a storm. Cables sparked. Tempers cracked. People whispered when executives weren't around. No one trusted the silence. The studio fought the rumors, but the rumors were stronger. They crawled through the industry like smoke. And no matter what the studio printed on paper, those who stood on that set knew the truth. Something was wrong, and it wasn't done yet. The fire had come and gone. The injuries and whispers stayed behind, but the worst cracks weren't in the walls. They were inside the people. Fact 6. The room. They turned into winter. The cold in Reagan's bedroom wasn't pretend. It was real and brutal. To make the actor's breath visible, they didn't use smoke or camera tricks. They brought in industrial refrigerators. They sealed the windows. and they froze the room until the air bit bare skin. Cables turned stiff. The camera lens fogged between takes. Actors exhaled clouds like steam engines. Linda Blair shivered in her nightgown while the crew stood bundled in heavy coats. It wasn't just uncomfortable, it changed how everyone behaved. The cold slowed their movements, tightened their voices, and wrapped every moment in tension. Even between takes, no one relaxed. They stood still, teeth chattering, waiting for the clapboard. By the time they called action, the room felt like a tomb. Still, silent, waiting. It gave the scene the look Friedkin wanted. Not just winter, but death pressing on the walls. Fact 7, the director who chased real fear. William Friedkin didn't trust fake fear. He wanted something raw, fear that hits before the mind has time to block it. So he set traps. He fired loud gun blanks on set to jolt actors just as the camera rolled. He snapped boards behind their heads without warning, and he pushed physical stunts harder than anyone expected. When an actor flinched, it was real. When their eyes went wide, it wasn't performance, it was instinct. One moment became famous. Before a priest character gave last rites, Friedkin suddenly slapped the actor across the face. The man's hands shook during the take. His voice cracked. It stayed in the film. Some called it brilliant, others called it cruel. Either way, it worked. Friedkin didn't want actors to act scared. He wanted them to be scared. And in those moments, they were. Down to the bone. Fact 8, the day the bed went too far. The bed that thrashed Reagan around was no illusion. It was a steel frame bolted to motors, timed to slam and jolt on cue. And one day, it didn't stop. During a take, the machine jerked harder than planned. Linda Blair slammed her back against the headboard and screamed. That scream wasn't acting, it was pain. The crew rushed to her, tools clattering, faces tight. They checked bolts and wires, promising it was safe now. But everyone felt the shift. The set itself had turned on them. Blair finished the film, but her back pain lingered for years. She was a teenager carrying the cost of that scene. The bed kept working, but no one trusted it after that. Each jolt brought a flinch, a glance, a breath held too long. They wanted terror. They got it. And the machine didn't care who paid for it. Fact 9. The vomit shot that went wrong. The crew planned it carefully, a hidden tube, a pump, thickened pea soup for color. It was supposed to hit the actor's chest. It didn't. When the pump fired, it hit Jason Miller, Father Karras, square in the face. Eyes, mouth, everything. His shock was instant. His disgust was real. He recoiled, wiping his face, furious. The camera caught all of it, and Friedkin kept it, because you can't act that kind of reaction. The set froze in silence for a moment, then slowly moved again. Someone laughed nervously. Miller did not. They realigned the aim for the next take, but the first shot was the one that stayed. It's one of the most famous moments in the film. Not because of the trick, because of the face. The raw, honest disgust that only happens once, and never again on cue. Fact 10. When the fear didn't leave. When the filming ended, the fear didn't. Cast and crew carried it home like static on their skin. Some had nightmares for weeks. Others said they couldn't shake the sound of Reagan's voice from their heads. Linda Blair faced something different. Fame mixed with fear. People screamed when they saw her in public. She needed security guards just to attend events. Ellen Burstyn managed interviews while her injured back still throbbed. Jason Miller spoke of the role's weight sitting on him long after he left the set. Even the tech crew said the film lingered. They'd hear noises at night that weren't there. It wasn't just a movie anymore, it was something they had lived through. And it stayed in their bones. The production ended. The shadow didn't. And the audience was about to feel that same shadow for themselves. Fact 11. The spider walk that was too much. It lasted only seconds, but it haunted everyone who saw it. Reagan bent backward like her bones were gone, crawled down the stairs upside down, fast, sharp, almost insect-like. Her mouth dripped blood. Her eyes stared cold and empty. It wasn't special effects. A skilled contortionist trained for weeks to make the movement real. The shot worked perfectly, and it was cut. William Friedkin removed the scene just before release. He feared it broke the film's slow build. It came too early, he said, and felt too much. For decades, fans whispered about a lost scene. In 2000, it returned in the re-release, the version you've never seen. Cleaned, sharpened, unforgettable. This moment shows how far they pushed, not just to shock, but to blur the line between the human body and the impossible. The scene was gone for 27 years, but once people saw it, they couldn't unsee it. Fact 12. Faces that flicker and vanish. You don't always see them, but your brain does. For a few frames, a blink, a heartbeat, a pale face flashes in the dark. White skin, black eyes, teeth caught between a grin and a snarl. Then it's gone. Friedkin hid these demon faces like ghostly fingerprints. They weren't accidents. They came from screen tests of actress Eileen Dietz in unused makeup. Too strange for full scenes, perfect for subliminal flashes. One appears in Father Karras's dream. Another lurks on a hood, frozen in a single frame. They slip past the eye and sink straight into the nerves. Viewers swore they saw something but couldn't name it. That's what Friedkin wanted. Doubt, not certainty. You don't notice them the first time, but something in your mind does, and it whispers back, something is watching. Fact 13. Sounds pulled from real exorcisms. Most horror films build their terror from scratch. The Exorcist borrowed some of its terror from reality. The sound designers layered real recordings from actual exorcisms into the audio mix. Screams, growls, human voices breaking apart. They were distorted, reversed, stretched until they were unrecognizable, but the weight of them stayed. These sounds sit just beneath the music, too faint to name but heavy enough to feel. They don't draw attention, they crawl under it. You can't tell where the voices come from, on screen, in the walls, or inside your head. That was the goal. Friedkin didn't want jump scares, he wanted pressure. Even people who didn't notice the sounds left screenings shaken, uneasy without knowing why. Their ears heard something their minds couldn't place. That's what made it work. The film didn't only tell a story, it carried echoes of real ones. Fact 14. Ghosts in the corners? Some of the creepiest things on screen aren't demons at all. They're crew members, hidden in plain sight. Friedkin planted them as silent watchers, half in shadow just for moments. A grip crouched behind furniture. A costumer slipped through the background dressed like hospital staff. Others stood perfectly still at the edge of the frame. They weren't mistakes. They were ghosts on purpose. Your eyes don't fully see them, but they make rooms feel watched. Ordinary spaces seem crowded by something you can't name. It keeps your shoulders tight even when nothing is moving. This trick works because the figures do nothing. They just exist, and that makes them feel real. Most viewers never notice them consciously, but their minds do, and that's enough. The scariest monsters don't roar. They wait. And this film filled its corners with things that waited. Fact 15. The scream that wasn't human. The most chilling sound in the film isn't Reagan's voice. It isn't even human. The sound team wanted something raw, something that cut through the air. They found it in a slaughterhouse. They recorded a pig's final scream, high and tearing, and buried it inside the soundtrack. They slowed it down, pitched it, folded it into Reagan's cries and the room's chaos. You don't hear pig, you hear fear. Your brain reacts before you know what it's hearing. Muscles tense, breathing shortened. It's an ancient reflex, the body recognizing a death cry. That scream hits hardest during the climax. The room shakes, voices crack, and beneath it all is that sound, sharp, real, unforgettable. It's why people remember the fear even if they forget the details. They didn't just watch something die on screen, they heard it. You saw flickers. You heard things that didn't belong. And if the film could shake people this deeply inside a theater, what would it do to the world outside? Fact 16. People fainted and panicked during screenings. The fear didn't stay on set. It walked into the theater with every crowd. Early showings saw people faint, stumble into aisles, and rush for fresh air. Some theaters kept paramedics on standby. Others handed out sickness bags. Most panic came during the cold clinical hospital scene. Needles, blood, and a machine that screams. It felt too real, too close. Managers paused projectors to calm lobbies. Friends dragged friends back to seats, hands shaking, faces pale. Not everyone made it to the end. The movie didn't chase them with monsters. It trapped them in a room with dread and let the sound do the rest. Word spread fast. People are passing out. Lines got longer, not shorter. Audiences wanted to test themselves. They wanted to see if they could handle it. A horror film became an endurance test. Many failed it. And the legend grew with every ambulance ride, every scream from the aisle, every exit door that burst open into the night. Fact 17. Religious groups condemned it as evil. Church leaders didn't all agree on the film. Some called it blasphemous. Others called it dangerous. A few said it was a warning worth hearing. Outside theaters, small protests formed. People held signs and handed out leaflets. They told moviegoers to turn around. Most didn't. Curiosity is a strong pull. Priests and pastors were asked about exorcism on talk shows. Radio shows ran call-ins about demons, faith, and fear. Some churches reported more people asking asking for guidance, not because the film caused evil, but because it shook people deeply. The studio had hired a Jesuit advisor for accuracy, yet strong voices still called the film evil. The noise only made the crowds bigger. Every warning turned into free advertising. In the end, the movie didn't argue theology. It showed a battle for a child and let viewers bring their own beliefs. But on the sidewalks outside, the verdict from many was simple and loud. This should not exist. Fact 18. Banned in several places for years. Not every country welcomed The Exorcist. Some banned it outright. Others cut scenes until the film barely resembled itself. Local councils in parts of the US tried to block screenings. In other regions, only adults could enter after heavy warnings. Home video was a different fight. In the UK, the film disappeared from store shelves for years. It wasn't a new cut. It was gone. Fans traded rumors and taped TV discussions like contraband. When the ban finally lifted, new lines formed. Older, curious, and ready. Elsewhere, censors focused on the medical scenes, the language, the blasphemy, the relentless tone. They said it was harmful. They said it would disturb public peace. They were right about one thing. It disturbed. Bans and cuts didn't weaken the film's power. They strengthened its myth. A movie kept from people becomes a story people chase. And this story only grew sharper in the dark. Fact 19. It spawned decades of exorcism movies and parodies. After 1973, the road was set. Studios greenlit possession stories like clockwork. Some chased realism, others chased shocks. A few chased both and found gold. Sequels came, some bold, some broken. Prequels arrived years later, arguing over which version counted. Beyond the official line, copycats filled shelves. Priests with haunted eyes, families in fear. Rooms that roared with unseen things. Courtroom dramas fused with exorcism. Haunted house films borrowed the language and the look. And then came the jokes. Parodies copied the bed shakes, the head turns, the green mess, because the images were too famous not to flip. When something becomes a punchline, it means it has already become legend. Decade by decade, new directors tried their own angle. More faith, more doubt, more science, more night. They were all aiming at the same target, a terror that feels personal. The Exorcist didn't just start a trend, it defined a mold and dared everyone else to fill it. Fact 20. Many involved said they never recovered. For some, the film ended when the credits rolled. For others, it didn't. Ellen Burstyn carried a back injury long after the set went quiet. Linda Blair faced sudden fame, heavy attention, and fear in public. She needed protection at events just to feel safe. Jason Miller spoke of the weight of playing a priest who doubts and breaks. Even crew members said certain sounds from the mix stayed with them at night. Interviews years later had the same echo. It changed me. It stayed in my head. I wish that take hadn't been real. Were they ruined? Number. But many were marked by pain, by pressure, by a story that demanded too much and then demanded more. That's the price of realism when realism hurts. They wanted to make a great film. They did, but it took something from them. And that's why the final whisper still feels true. They set out to make horror history, and they created a legend that never let go.